Hi everyone. Today my topic for learning series is concurrency in transaction. As the topic only suggests that we are going to talk about the transaction which takes place simultaneously. So what is a transaction? A transaction is a set of instructions that perform some task to provide a logical unit of work. So transactions follow all these properties, that is atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. By atomicity, we mean that either a transaction should completely take place or either it should not take place. Uh, there is no chance of having the transaction partially completed. So by consistency, we mean that the correctness is in the database before and after the transaction. The database should have the correct value. By isolation, we mean that there is logical isolation. For example, if we are booking tickets for IRCTC, then every person is feeling, every transaction is feeling that it is the only transaction taking place at that time. And by durability, it means that once we commit in the database, means once we get the ticket for booking the ticket in the train, then it is final. Means if there is this, hardware or software failure, it will not affect that after 5 days you will be told that you haven't booked the ticket for the train. uh, these are the following advantage that if we have concurrency. First, waiting time of the transaction reduces if there are multiple transactions running at the same time, and if they would have been individually waiting for each other, then the waiting time would be long, and response time also increases, and resource utilization, since many transactions are taking place simultaneously, resource utilization also increases. As a result, efficiency also increase, but there may be a chance that a transaction individually follow all the asset properties, but all the transaction taking place in the system may put the system into inconsistent state. There are many problems when we talk about concurrency. We will deal about it one by one. First is the dirty read problem. In dirty read, we can take it as a real life example also. We copied an answer from someone and submitted the answer sheet before that person from whom we have copied the answer. So what happens when we submitted the copy, the another student from which we have copied the answer made the changes in the answers of him or her. So what happens as a result, the system will go into inconsistent state. Similarly, we can see it here. T2 reads the value which is changed by T1 and commits the value. But the transaction 1, due to some problem, fails and it rolls back. So T2 commits a value that is not there in the system and it does not exist in the system. The solution for this problem is, unless or until the T1 commits the value, T2 shouldn't have commit the value. Means first we will wait for T1 to commit the value, then T2 will commit the value. Another problem that we face is unrepeatable read problem. By unrepeatable read problem, we mean that as we have discussed in asset property, every transaction feels like it is the only transaction taking place in the system at that point. So when T2 reads the value from T1, got the value 10, after 10 seconds, T1 changed the value to 11. Now T2 reads the value 11. So as a result, transaction 2 will go into inconsistent state because transaction 2 was thinking that it is the only transaction and somebody has changed his value from 10 to 11. The another problem that we face is phantom read problem. In phantom read problem, it is same as every transaction feels like it is the only transaction taking place in the system at that point. So what happens? T1 reads the value, T2 reads the same value. And since the value is in the local buffer, T1 deletes the value. And when T2 tries to read the value, again, it gets an error that variable does not exist. Means T2 goes into a dilemma whether after 10 seconds what happened, that he was not able to read the value. Although this shouldn't happen, as a result, the whole system goes into inconsistent state. The next problem that we face in concurrency is lost update problem, that is write-write conflict. In write-write conflict, first we will discuss about blind write. In blind write, what happens, without reading a value, a transaction come and writes on the data value. So when T1 came, it reads the value, then writes the value, then T2 writes the value and commit the value in the database from the local buffer. As a result, T1 commits the value 50, but it should have been committed the value 11. As a result, it lost its updated value. Now we will discuss about serial and non-serial schedules. Serial schedules are guarantees that the system will be in consistent state, because first T1 completes all its transaction and then T2 starts its transaction. As a result, there will be correctness in the database. And in non-serial schedule, there is context switching between the data items. First T1 performs some values and then T2 performs some values. The conflicting instructions, now we'll discuss about conflicting instructions. Conflicting instruction occurs when we operate on the same data value and one of them is a write instruction. So we cannot swap these values, because if T1 reads a value and then T2 writes on it. So if we try to swap these values, T2 will first write and then read. As a result, the whole system will go into inconsistent state. So next is conflict serializability. If we can convert a non-serial schedule into a serial schedule by the swapping of non-conflicting instructions. So when we try to swap the non-conflicting instructions, then the schedule that is obtained is conflict serializable. We can also understand it by making a graph. For example, if we have three transactions and if any point of time we are getting conflicting instruction, there will be an edge from that transaction to that particular transaction. For example, if there is read of X, and in transaction 3 there is write of X, and we see that they are operating on same data item and one of them is a write operation. So there is an edge from T1 to T3. Then we go for read of Z. When we perform read of Z, and in T2 we see that there is write of Z. So there is an edge from T3 to T2. And similarly, we could see that read of Y, we can perform read operations. So there is no issue in it. But when we see for T3 to T1, there will be an edge. So we could see that there is a cycle. Whenever there is a cycle, then the schedule is not conflict serializable. Now we will discuss about view serializability. As we see that if a schedule is conflict serializable, it will be definitely view serializable, but there may be a chances that the system is consistent and the schedule is not conflict serializable. So in view serializability, usually view serializability occur when there is a situation of blind write. So what in view serializability, it is an anti-hat problem, because in this we try to solve the non-serial schedule by making all the possible serial schedule for that particular non-serial schedule and try to compare it as view equivalent. And by view equivalent, I mean that initial read should be same, final write should be same, and intermediate reads should also be same, because we are comparing two non-serial and serial schedule. And as we have discussed, if we are able to convert a non-serial schedule into a serial schedule, then the system will go into consistent state. Now we will discuss about concurrency control techniques. In concurrency control techniques, we try to generate schedules which follow conflict serializability, view serializability, and there is no chance of dirty reads, because if they are the dirty reads, there will be a problem of irrecoverable schedules and cascading rollbacks. So we have two types of protocols for that, that is time stamping protocol and log based protocol. In time stamping protocol, as soon as a transaction enters into the system, it is given a timestamp. By timestamp, for example, when we are born, we are given a date of birth. Similarly, whenever a transaction comes into a system, it is given a timestamp. So whenever a new transaction enters into a system, will have a higher timestamp than the previous one, which is already in the system, and it will be unique and can never be repeated. Similarly, we put timestamp on data items. By since on data items, we could only perform read operation or write operation. By write operation, we see by write timestamp of Q or on the data item that we perform, we mean that the largest timestamp executed on that particular data item. And by read timestamp, we mean that the largest timestamp of the transaction that executed read operation on that particular data item successfully. So TI, when TI request for a read operation, we first see that if TI request for a read operation and was not able to perform the read operation at 5 seconds, and some other transaction came and perform at 10 seconds, perform a write operation on that particular transaction, particular data item. So what happened? Now TI request for reading the value, he won't be able to do it, so because we have discussed they are operating on the same data item, and one of them is a write instruction. So these instructions are conflicting instructions and we couldn't swap them. So what we will do, TI will be requested to go back and enter into the system again with a new timestamp to perform this particular operation. And write times and read timestamp will be updated by the maximum timestamp of the transaction that enters into the system, that is read timestamp of Q. And by write timestamp, similarly, if a transaction was supposed to write on a particular value and was not able to do so, so he would be requested to go back and enter into the system again with a new timestamp in order to perform this operation, so that there are no conflicting instructions. And write timestamp of Q will be updated by the maximum write operation which was performed on that particular data item successfully. The properties of timestamping protocol are, as we are not swapping the conflicting instruction and are able to get this and are able to make these schedules which are consistent, so it ensures conflict serializability, view serializability. But what we can see that if there are two transactions and if we are performing read operation on one and write on that first transaction, and another transaction is reading the value, since we are not restricting anything on the commits, so any transaction can commit at any time, and we could get into the situation of dirty reads. And when there is a possibility of dirty read, then the schedule are irrecoverable, because if T1 for any reason rolls back, and so T2 will be reading the value that does not exist in the system. Now since we are not allowed, either a transaction takes place completely or either it rolls back. So there is no chance of deadlock. But if we are dealing with huge amount of data, for example, if 1 lakh transactions are running at the same time, then each transaction being checked for its timestamp, and if it does if it is not allowed to perform the operation, it will go back, and it will roll back, and may be a situation that it roll back many times and leads to starvation. And as a result, checking of 1 lakh data item from this process make the system relatively slower. The another extension of timestamping protocol is Thomas-Wright rule. In Thomas-Wright rule, what happens if a data item was supposed to write at a particular time but was not available at that time? So what happens? We could simply ignore this value because TX would have written this value even if their TI written that value in the system. Means the value written by T of X will be there even if TI has performed this operation or has not performed this operation. So we could simply ignore this value and proceed with the other transaction. This is the only case in which the schedule, since there is a possibility of blind write, these are the only schedules that are not conflict serializable but are view serializable, and they provide better concurrency. If we made WQ to roll back, then we are following the timestamping protocol. But if we ignore the WQ and continue to do our other transaction, then we follow Thomas-Wright rule. Now, another type of protocol that we use are log-based protocol. We use log-based protocol to achieve isolation. Means that only at one time, only one transaction is able to perform operation on one data item, and unless or until it unblocks it, another transaction won't be able to do it so. It provides better concurrency, and we have two modes of locking, that is exclusive lock and shared lock. Shared lock are compatible with each other, whereas exclusive and shared lock are not compatible with each other. So first we will discuss about two-phase locking protocol. In two-phase locking protocol, we have two phases, that is growing phase and shrinking phase. In growing phase, we acquire the locks, means a particular transaction acquires the locks and then release the lock. So the schedule that we obtained from this are conflict serializable, because unless or until a transaction unlocks a lock, other transaction won't be able to lock that particular data item. So there won't be chances of conflicting instruction to be swapped. But since we are not providing any restriction on the type of commits, so there may be a chance of dirty reads, and whenever there will be a chance of dirty reads, the schedule are not recoverable, and there will be a chance of cascading rollbacks. And there may be a problem of deadlock, as if T1 has logged a particular item and T2 has also logged a particular item, and after some time they need the item which is logged by T1 and item which is logged by T2. As a result, they will go into a cycle, and there will be a problem of deadlock. Another approach is conservative or static 2PL, in which first we acquire logs for all the resources that we want for a particular transaction to occur, and then go for releasing the logs. Means that there is no growing phase, only shrinking phase. But there is a problem in this. Initially, when we start a transaction, it is not possible every time that we know all the resources in advance before performing the transaction that we want. The properties of these are the schedule that are obtained from this are conflict serializable because we are not swapping the conflicting instruction. And since we are not providing any restriction on the type of commits, there will be a possibility of unrecoverable and cascading rollbacks. But there will be no situation of deadlock, because we acquire lock on all the data item first and then release the lock. Unless or until a data item does not get the lock, will not wait for the other one to release it, because initially we acquire lock for all the data items. Another approach is regress 2PL. In regress 2PL, there is only growing phase, means that all the data items acquire the lock and they never release that lock in their entire phase. They only commits and then release the lock. But there is a problem in this type of approach, that the major concern of doing all this is providing concurrency. Since we are not able, if a transaction is holding a lock on some particular data item, the another transaction won't be able to perform anything on that particular data item. So there will be no concurrency. And we are able to ensure recoverability and cascadeless, but the major concern here is to provide concurrency, and since there is no concurrency in this, so it is not a good approach. The properties are it provides schedules which are conflict serializable, view serializable, since there is no chance of dirty reads, because we are providing lock on that particular data item, and since we are not releasing the locks, the another data item won't be able to read the value. So the schedules are recoverable and there is no chance of cascading rollbacks, but there is a chance of getting the system into insufficient state, means we are not providing concurrency. That was the major concern of doing all these. Another type of approach that we can use is strict 2PL. In strict 2PL, there is a growing phase and there is a partial shrinking phase. By partial shrinking phase, that we release only the shared logs, because shared logs are only for reading the value. So we could read the value. As a result, it provides us better concurrency, and we are able to provide concurrency that we were not performing in regress two-phase locking protocol. In graph-based protocol, now we have completed the log-based protocol and moving forward to graph-based protocol. In graph-based protocol, we use partial ordering. Means by partial ordering, we means that we should have prior knowledge of all the data items before locking a particular. Means if we want to lock a child, we have to first lock it parent. There is a partial ordering, and graphs obtained from this are rooted tree, and logs will be in exclusive mode only. In graph-based protocol, further we have tree-based protocol. In tree-based protocol, first lock can be acquired on any data item. So first we can apply lock on any data item, and if we want to subsequently lock a data item, the data item above it should be locked. And we can unlock a data item at any point of time. The data item Q that has been locked or unlocked, means if one time we have locked or unlocked an item, we could not re-lock it again. As we can see here, if first we can lock B, then lock D, then lock E, then we can unlock B and then lock I, because E is locked. Then release the lock for D, E, and I. But we can see here, in order to lock I, we have to first lock it parent, then only we are able to do it so. Similarly, in this example, if we lock A, then B, then C, then unlock A, then lock D, and unlock B, then lock C, unlock D, and similarly unlock all the remaining ones. Thanks.